Okay, so we have started our today's session. In the last session, we were discussing about finding knowledge gap, and we discussed about finding knowledge gap on Google Scholar. Now, when we talk about knowledge gap, it is very important for you to understand that knowledge gap is not a random combination of terms. Knowledge gap is a scholarly way to determine whether you can create new knowledge or not. So I gave you an example of, Google Scholar. I gave you an example of student satisfaction that we can search about. If you want to do research on student satisfaction, you can simply type student satisfaction in inverted commas on Google Scholar, and you will realize that there are more than 160,000 research articles which have already been published about student satisfaction. But you want to narrow it down. So we want to narrow it down. How can we narrow it down? We can narrow it down by, finding the number of articles that are published since 2020. So when I narrow it down, I want to see that how many papers have been published on the topic of student satisfaction since 2020. Okay. So how will I will do all these things? So I will move to the next slide. Let me go to the next slide. Okay. So when we talk about student satisfaction, since 2020, we only have 5,530 research results. And this means that it is very difficult to find knowledge gap, even if you are talking about since 2020, because this means that each day there has been close to 20 research papers which are published about student satisfaction. So it means that this is a very mature topic, and it will be very difficult for you to find knowledge gap. Now, let me just clear to you that what is knowledge gap. Knowledge gap is basically creating new knowledge. Creating new knowledge. You are creating new knowledge. Why you want to create new knowledge? Because you don't want to repeat what has already been found. So what has already been found, you don't want to repeat it. So you don't want to repeat what has already been found. So knowledge gap is creating new knowledge. So if you mix, student satisfaction with remote learning, you would see that in remote learning, we have student satisfaction in remote learning, we only have 463 research results about it. So this means that we are going in the right direction, because there is not much research about student satisfaction in the online learning environment. Okay. So, so now we further refine it. We further, specify it. So how can we further specify it? So we further specify it by discussing the student satisfaction in the remote learning environment and the relationship of student satisfaction with the academic stress in the remote learning environment. And to our surprise, there are only 5 research papers which have been published on this topic. So the research papers which have studied these three aspects related to students, there are only 5 research papers. So it means that there is lot of room available for you to create new knowledge. You can create new knowledge here. Why? Because only 5 research papers are written on this topic. Only 5 research papers are written on this topic. Okay. So when you write research paper on these three topics, this will be a new knowledge. You will be creating new knowledge in this regard. So it is very important for you to understand that in this course we will be creating a new knowledge. Okay. So this was what we discussed in our last class. Uh, Again, I will try to emphasize that when you are trying to find knowledge gap, it is not a random combination of keywords. The keywords need to be scholarly. The keywords should make some sense. Okay, so there should not be a random combination of keywords, because for example, let me give you an example. If you try to find knowledge gap in this regard, okay, for instance, uh, let me say, hmm,
第一就是
eagle and
我没看，我怎么
onion and student satisfaction. There will be zero results. There will be zero results when you try to find these three keywords. So it does not mean that you need to do a study, you need to investigate student satisfaction in terms of eagle and onion. So please be very careful that knowledge gap should not be a combination of any random words. So whenever you are trying to find knowledge gap on Google Scholar, please keep in mind that on Google Scholar, you should not use random combination of keywords. A random combination of keywords is not recommended. Okay. So like a random combination of keywords is like here. I have given you an example. So this is random combination of keywords here. Eagle, onion, student satisfaction. You will have zero results here, but this does not mean that this is a knowledge gap. So you need to keep in mind that you should not use random combination of keywords. The keywords should be scholarly. The keywords should be relevant. The keywords should make sense. The keywords should be logical. Okay, so let me write it here. The keywords which you use in order to find knowledge gap on Google Scholar, these keywords should be logical. These keywords should be scholarly. These keywords should be related. These keywords should be relevant to the discipline which you are working on. So you need to keep these things in mind. Whatever keyword you are using, it should not be random. The keyword should be logical, scholarly, relevant, and related to the field which you are studying. Okay, so this is what I wanted to discuss in our last lecture as well. So I want you to understand that whatever way you use to find your knowledge gap, you need to keep this in mind, that the keywords you use to find your knowledge gap, they should be logical, they should be scholarly, they should be related to the field which you are discussing. So this is a very important suggestion from my side for you to understand. Okay. So let me give you a kind of example that how you can understand about knowledge gap by reading research papers. Okay. So when you are reading research paper, where you can find the knowledge gap, usually the best place to find the knowledge gap in research paper is at the introduction section. The introduction section of the research paper, if you read the introduction section of the research paper, you will get to know the knowledge gap. Okay, so the knowledge gap can be easily identified. The knowledge gap can be easily find out in at the introduction section of the research paper. Okay, so I'm just giving you an example. So this is a paper, and this paper, the paper title is Duplicatures. Duplicatures mean those buildings which are copied. Okay, so what does duplicatures means? Those buildings which are copied, which are imitated, which are imitations. Okay, which are copied. Okay, so those buildings which are imitations. So duplicatures as tourist attractions, an exploratory study on experiences of Chinese tourists at replicas of foreign architectural landmarks in China. So this is the research paper. Now, if you open this research paper, in the introduction part of this research paper, you can easily identify the knowledge gap which these authors, focused upon. So this is from that research paper. Let me read and let me try to make you understand that how you can write knowledge gap, how you can identify knowledge gap. Okay, so this is from the authors. Existing research on copy sites. So copy sites are basically these duplicatures. Existing research on copy sites is not only scant. Scant means very less. Okay, very limited. Very limited. So scant means limited. The existing research on this topic is limited, is very limited, and it is also descriptive. Descriptive means that the study is not theoretically founded. The study is very simple. Okay, the study does not follow lots of protocols, lots of guidelines. So study is not very research oriented study, and non-theoretical in nature. So whatever previous researchers have done on the topic of duplicatures is not theoretically sufficient. It is not very theoretically enriching. So with reference to China, only a handful of studies, only few studies are available, and they offer a limited understanding of the different forms of architectural imitations in China. So even in China, if we have any research papers which have studied these imitated or replicas of foreign architectures, they are very limited, and they have not studied this concept, comprehensively. So it means that there is a gap. So this is how they have identified the gap. Okay, and they have also given the references of other papers that other researchers have done this, but we are not doing this. Okay, other researchers have done this, so there is a limitation. So they have identified the limitation. So this research is trying to create a new knowledge, and they have also identified the limitations in the previous research papers, the limitations in the existing research papers. Okay, so is there any question? Yes, my internet is not very stable because I am not on campus. I am at my apartment, and at the moment, the internet is not very stable. So I'm afraid we can't do much about it, because most of the faculty who are living on the campus, they might have a very good internet, but because I'm not living on the campus, I'm living outside the campus. I'm living in apartment which is also arranged by the WKU. So I'm very sorry for this. I don't think so I can do anything in this regard. Okay, so okay, let us begin from where we stopped. Okay, so the theoretical streams on authentic tourism experiences recognize that the genuineness of the tourism objects or events is not the only way of comprehending authenticity. So there exists a need to capture the tourist perspective. Okay, so they are trying to build a case that why it is important for you to study this topic. Okay, so let me try to simplify it. So whenever you are trying to find the knowledge gap, you are trying to do three very important things. Let me specify it in our next slide. So whenever you're trying to find a knowledge gap, you are doing these three things. Number one, you are trying to find the limitations in the previous research studies. What are the limitations in the previous research studies? So you are trying to identify the limitations in the previous research studies. Number one. Number two, you are trying to uh, give reasons or justifications why it is important to create this new knowledge which you are going to create, which you are aiming to create, which you are aiming to create in your research. study. You need to give reasons, you need to give justifications. Okay, so first of all, you need to find the limitations in the previous study and give reasons and justifications why it is important to create this new knowledge, why it is important to create this new knowledge which you are aiming to create in your study. And then you give reasons, you give justifications that why your study is important for readers, for industry, for researchers. You need to give answer to these three questions. And if you look at the um, uh, you know this previously the previous slide, if you look at the previous slide, all these three questions are answered in this one paragraph. All these three questions. Okay, so they have identified the gaps in the previous studies. Here they have identified the gaps, they have given the reasons why it is important for you to study this particular topic, and then they have given the reasons why it is important for you to study this particular topic, why it is important for you, why it is important for the industry, why it is important for the population, why it is important for the consumers or the tourists. So the question number one is answered here, the question number two is answered here, the question number three is answered here. So that is why it is very important for you to ground your study, to logically ground your study. Because if you don't contextualize your study, if you don't ground your study, it becomes a very unconvincing thing. So one very important thing in research is that you need to convince, you need to convince, you need to give convincing arguments why this study is needed. You need to give convincing arguments that why this study is needed. And if you cannot give convincing arguments, this will be a disaster. Because if your readers are not convinced, if other scholars are not convinced, other researchers are not convinced about the study, then I'm afraid that your research effort will not be appreciated. So remember that you are creating new knowledge, and when you are creating new knowledge, you need to give convincing arguments. You cannot expect people to appreciate your effort if your arguments are not convincing. So this is very, very important for you to understand. So these three questions you need to justify in the introduction section of your research project. So whenever you start writing your research project, we will discuss about research project in detail when I will be on campus. We will discuss about it in detail, but just keep in mind that these are three important questions you need to answer about your knowledge gap when you are writing your research. Okay. Okay, so now let me try to simplify further. So let me try to simplify further about your understanding of research. We have different types of research. We have already discussed research by application. We have discussed about pure research. It is also called as basic research. We have discussed about applied research. So I am hopeful that you are clear about these two types. Now let us discuss research by objectives. So we have four different types of research by objectives. Okay, descriptive research, exploratory research, correlational research, and explanatory research. Now let me try to simplify what is descriptive research. Okay, in descriptive research we are focused about the characteristics of population. I'm writing because I don't think so I'm very clearly audible. So that is why I'm writing, so you can easily understand. Characteristics of population. For example, I will give you an example of descriptive research. So how many students, how many WKU graduates get into top 500 universities of the world. This is a descriptive research. Very simple, very easy. In descriptive research, we are only focused upon characteristics of population. Now, one more example of descriptive research. So at the moment, we have 60 participants in the class, 60 participants in the class. Okay. So a very simple descriptive research would be what is the ratio of student participation in the GE class? What is the ratio of student attendance in GE class? GE2021. So I know that you are 66 students, and but there are 59 students. So it means that about 95, maybe 95% students are present here at the moment. So this is a very, very simple research. Descriptive research is very simple. In descriptive research, we are only focused about finding out the characteristics of population. Like I have given you two examples. How many WKU graduates get into top 500 universities of the world? You can simply do research. You can find the answer of this research in 1 day, 2 day, or maybe in 3 days. Okay. What is the ratio of student attendance in GE2021? So we just did a minor research activity, and we find out that it is close to 95%. Okay, so this is descriptive research. Another example of descriptive research is population census. What is the total population of China? How many are females? How many are males? What is the average age of marriage? What is the average family size? All these questions are answered by descriptive research. So descriptive research is very, very simple. And for this course, I will not recommend descriptive research. So let me put a big cross here. I will not recommend descriptive research for this course because it is very, very simple, and the answer to descriptive research can be easily found out by you in a couple of days. So I'm not very a big fan of descriptive research. Now, about correlational research. What is correlational research? So let me try to simplify the correlational research here. So the correlation research is basically you try to find out the association between uh, two or more than two aspects of a situation. Two or more than two aspects of a situation. What does this mean? For example, let me give you an example. What is the relationship between GPA and your let us say your getting into top 500 universities of the world? Top 500. What is the relationship? So the relationship might be positive or it can be negative, right? Mostly we know that the relationship will be positive. Okay, so the relationship between GPA and getting into the top 500 universities of the world, it is positive. But it is just a correlational study. In correlational study, we do not find out that whether GPA is the reason behind getting admission in top 500 universities. We don't find the reason. We are just finding the association. Two things are related. That's it. Okay. We do not find whether one is causing the other phenomena. We are not interested in explaining the reason behind the phenomena. We are just interested in finding the association. So there is an association between GPA and getting into the top 500 universities of the world. But is GPA the reason behind getting into top 500 universities of the world? This is not correlational study. So in correlational study, we just find out the association. Is there a link between two aspects? And we just find out the link. We do not find out the causation. Okay, let me write this. We do not find out causation. So cause effect is not focus here in the correlational study. So we just try to find out whether there is a association between two aspects. Okay, this association can be positive, this association can be negative, it can be any orientation. So this is correlational study. And then there is explanatory research. Okay, let me try to simplify what is explanatory research. Okay, so explanatory research. So in explanatory research, we try to find out the reason. We try to find out the cause and effect. Okay, for example, we are trying to find answers to the questions like, does GPA cause or does GPA contribute to the admission in top 500 universities? Okay, so we try to find out the reason. We try to see that how one aspect is caused by another. Okay, so in explanatory research, we try to find out the cause and effect relationship between two aspects of the situation. Okay, other examples. For example, what about the relationship between academic stress and uh, work overload? We expect that more work overload will cause more academic stress. So this is explanatory research. We are trying to establish cause and effect relationship between two aspects of the situation. We are trying to find out the relationship of cause and effect. So in correlational research, we are not trying to find out the cause and effect relationship. In correlational research, we are only focused on the thing that whether two aspects of the situation are related to each other or not. Okay, in correlational research, we are only interested in the relationship, whether two aspects are related or not. But in explanatory research, our focus changes. We are interested in whether one thing is the reason behind the another thing. So in explanatory research, we are trying to find out the cause and effect relationship. So that is why explanatory research is more superior as compared to the correlational research. So I will not recommend correlational research to you as well. So I will recommend explanatory research, because explanatory research is more superior. It tries to find out the reasons. Okay, so it tries to find out that how much GPA is contributing in your admission in top 500 universities. This question will be answered by the explanatory research, and this is a very valid question to answer. Okay, so my recommendation to you is that you should not be doing descriptive research, definitely not be doing descriptive research, because it is not very superior. Correlational research, it is good but not very superior. Explanatory research in this regard is quite superior, so you can do explanatory research. And what about exploratory research? So let us try to find out the answer, that what is exploratory research. So then when we talk about exploratory research, in exploratory research, it is usually done when existing knowledge about anything is very limited. When existing knowledge is limited. Okay, so when existing knowledge is limited, you tend to explore that situation more. For example, existing knowledge is limited about how COVID situation affected consumption habits, affected HR practices, affected consumer habits. Okay, or how it affected the recruitment practices. Okay, so these are some of the topics which we don't know. The answer to these topics is still evolving. We don't know the exact answer about these topics. So when existing knowledge is limited, then at that point of time, we are basically doing exploratory research. So when existing knowledge is limited, we can do exploratory research. And I have given you examples of limited knowledge, like how COVID affects HR practices, how COVID is affecting consumer habits, how COVID is affecting recruitment practices, how COVID is affecting accounting practices or finance practices or auditing practices. So these are all the topics which we are still trying to understand. Why? Because COVID is a very recent phenomena. It is just 1.5 years old. Okay. It is not a very old phenomena. It is a recent phenomena. So still there is a lot of knowledge which is being gathered about COVID. Okay. So when the knowledge is limited, when the existing knowledge is limited, then you can conduct exploratory research. So whether you should be doing exploratory research or not, this is a question. If you are up for challenge, if you are up for a challenge, then you can conduct exploratory research, because exploratory research, remember, it is difficult. Why it is difficult? Why? Because the existing knowledge is limited. You don't know a lot about that phenomena, because that phenomena is relatively new. That phenomena is relatively recent. So you don't know about that phenomena. So that is why the existing knowledge is limited. And when existing knowledge is limited, the research is extremely challenging. So you can do exploratory research only if you are up for the challenge. If you are not up for the challenge, then I think you should stick to the explanatory research. So this is my recommendation. You can do explanatory research, and this is also my recommendation. You can do pure research. Okay, this is my recommendation. Do pure research, do explanatory research. But if you want to do exploratory research, I will give you all the guidance. I will give you all the advice in my capacity, because it will be challenging. Okay, so I will stop here, and I will try. I will open the floor for any questions, because I want to understand that whether you are following, because these are some very difficult concepts. So any questions? It is not easier to create new knowledge by exploratory research. Why it is not easy? Because creating new knowledge means that you are trying to do something which has never been done before. Okay. So what is new knowledge? Let us try to understand what is new knowledge. New knowledge means that you are doing something which has never been done before. Doing something which has never been done before. Never been done before. Okay. So this is very strange, because there are millions of researchers who are currently doing some kind of research, and you are doing something which has never been done before. This is something which is extremely challenging. So if you are interested, if you are interested in doing exploratory research, then you should be up for the challenge. There will be situations when you will not understand how to proceed. You will not understand. So if you're going to do exploratory research to create new knowledge, then I just have one suggestion to you, that you need to be very patient, you need to be very hardworking, and you need to be very focused. But the rewards would be extremely good, because your paper would be published in a very good journal. You can get good position, you can get good recommendation, you can get good admission in any good university. It will be a kind of your achievement, a great achievement. So if you're doing exploratory research, then you should be up for the challenge. It is very challenging. Okay, other questions? Can you explain pure research again? And can you, okay, first of all, with little knowledge in this field, I can have more room to create new things. Isn't that true? It is true that if there is little knowledge, you will have more room to create new things. It is true, but at the same time, I will try to make you understand that usually knowledge is basically not created in vacuum. Knowledge is not created in vacuum. Knowledge is built on one upon other. So there is one layer of knowledge, then there is another 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 layer of knowledge. So knowledge is built like this. Okay, so then there is a huge building. So knowledge is like this. Okay, so remember that when you are doing exploratory research, this is an empty field, and you will not have a lot of ground to build the building. Okay, so that is why you need to lay down the foundation. Okay, you need to lay down the foundation. It will be difficult for you, but in case of explanatory research, the field will be like this. The field will be like this. Most of the things would have already been done, and you just need to do something which has not been done before. So in the explanatory research, your knowledge pyramid will be like this. But in the exploratory research, your knowledge pyramid will be like this. So it will be very difficult for you to build upon the existing knowledge when existing knowledge is very limited. But in explanatory research, the existing knowledge is quite sufficiently built. So you just need to find the gap. So there is a gap, you fill the gap. But in exploratory research, the gaps are so much, and you need to do a lot more. You need to lay down the foundation because the foundation has not been laid down before. So I'm not discouraging you. I'm just cautioning you. I'm just giving you a kind of a precaution that if you want to do exploratory research, you are more than welcome. But just remember that maybe after 2 months, you will realize that, oh, I'm in a mess. I'm really stressed. So just keep in mind that the journey will not be smooth. It will be difficult journey. Okay, because we just have 4 months to finish this research project. Okay, uh, could you please explain pure research, basic research? Okay, yeah. So pure research is basically basic research. Pure research and basic research are the same thing. Okay, so let me just repeat what I explained in my last lecture. In my last lecture, I explained the differences between the pure research and the applied research. In pure research, we investigate the problems which are faced by many organizations. So the problem is not unique. The problem is faced by many organizations. Like we discussed the example of student attentiveness. Students are not attentive in the class. Now, students are generally not attentive. So a human mind cannot have attention span more than 5 minutes. More than 5 minutes attention span is not possible for human beings. Is not possible for human beings. So this is natural. Human beings are not generally attentive creatures. So when the attention span is not high, the attention span is limited. So it means that the attentiveness is a problem. Attentiveness is a problem which is faced by many people. It is a problem which is faced by many students. So when a problem is not unique, the problem is faced by many people, then we can say that that problem is a pure research problem, a basic research problem. But when a problem is unique, a unique to one organization, unique to few people, unique to few organizations, then that problem comes under the applied research. So in basic research, we have different protocols. In basic research, we have different guidelines, but in applied research, we have different guidelines. So we have discussed this in our first lecture. Are there any tips for finding knowledge gap? Yes, definitely. I just gave you example of okay, there are many questions. Let me see one by one. Is pure research a kind of research that links into that look into a certain theory? Yes, pure research relies on the theories. Applied research do not rely on theory. So the pure research, which is also called as basic research, it relies on theories. Okay. Are there any tips for finding knowledge gap? Yes, actually, I gave you a demonstration for finding knowledge gap. I will take you there again. If I want to work on a topic but get lost in that direction, what research should I do? Okay, this question will be answered by me at the end of this lecture. I will answer this question at the end of this lecture. What research you should do when you get lost? Okay. So pure research is related to applied research? Not really, because in pure research, we are investigating the problem which is faced by many organizations. But in applied research, the problem is unique to a single organization. So if the problem is faced by a single organization and that problem has already been discussed in the pure research, then we can say that pure research is related to the applied research. Okay. So in that sense, pure research can be related to applied research, but applied research and pure research are usually not related. Okay. Okay. Let me give you. So I'm rubbing this whiteboard. So I'm going to rub this thing. Clear all drawings. Okay. Okay. Just I want to give you finding knowledge gap. So this is what I meant by knowledge gap. Remember, I talked about student satisfaction. You can search about student satisfaction on Google Scholar. There are so many research results, 169,000, too many research results. Then we narrow it down. We want to find the research results since 2020. When we talk about 2020, there are 5,533 research results. Okay, so this is finding knowledge gap. This is the way to find the knowledge gap. But when we combine the student satisfaction in the online learning environment or remote learning environment, there are only 463 results. It means that the knowledge is not well developed in this field. The knowledge is limited in this field. Okay. So when we discussed about So when we discussed about student satisfaction and remote learning in case of academic stress, then we find that only 5 results are there. So it means that there is a huge knowledge gap. So there is a knowledge gap here. Okay, so there is a knowledge gap because there are only 5 research papers. 5 research papers discussed academic stress and student satisfaction in online learning environment. Okay, so this is the way to find the knowledge gap. I hope so that you can find your knowledge gap in this way. But in the coming lectures, I will also tell you that what kind of keywords you need to use in finding the knowledge gap. In the coming lectures, I will share you the complete demonstration. Okay, so I'm going very slow in the online classes. Once we will be on the campus, I will show you that these keywords, how to find these keywords, how to come up with these keywords. Okay, so these are not a random keywords. These are very intelligently thought keywords. Okay, so I will explain to you how to find these keywords. Okay. So we have discussed about research by objectives. Okay, let me see. Okay. Now, the last research type. The last research type. Let us discuss the last research type. The research type by inquiry mode. So we have 3 different types of research here: mixed method research, quantitative research, and qualitative research. So let us try to find the difference. Okay, what is quantitative research? So in quantitative research, it is a very structured way of doing research. It is a very structured way of doing research. Now, what is a structured way? Structured way means that uh, you are doing, you know, uh, you're following certain protocols and guidelines, and you cannot skip those guidelines, because if you skip those guidelines, your research will not be valid. If you skip those guidelines, if those guidelines are not followed, your research will not be valid. Okay. So structured way of doing research is called as quantitative research. Okay. And usually in quantitative research, we are using empirical data. We are using empirical data. We are using statistical tests. Okay. We are conducting surveys. We are getting our questionnaires filled. Okay. So this is all about quantitative research. Okay, if you compare the quantitative research with the qualitative research, there is a difference. There is a huge difference between the quantitative research and the qualitative research, because in the qualitative research, it is not structured. It is not structured. Okay, the protocols are quite flexible in the qualitative research. And another important thing here is that the data is not necessarily empirical. And how you collect data? You can do interviews. So instead of surveys, questionnaires are not used. Questionnaires are usually not used here. And another important thing, the problem is not specific. Problem is broad, or I should say, the knowledge gap is, or I should say, the existing knowledge is limited. So when existing knowledge is limited, you are usually conducting qualitative research. And when is, you know, existing knowledge is existing knowledge is mature, then you can do quantitative research. So these are the two important differences between the quantitative research. So first difference is that it is a structured way. The quantitative research is very structured. The qualitative research is not structured. In the quantitative research, you have to follow certain protocols and guidelines. And if you don't follow those guidelines, your research will not be considered valid. In qualitative research, the guidelines are quite flexible. In quantitative research, we use empirical data, we use statistical tests. In qualitative research, we usually do interviews. In qualitative research, we don't usually use questionnaires. Okay, and we can also use other kind of qualitative inquiries. We can use content analysis. We can use other kind of ethnographic observation. We will discuss these things in the coming lectures. And most important thing, in quantitative research, the existing knowledge is relatively matured. Okay, but in qualitative research, existing knowledge is limited. So existing knowledge is limited in the qualitative research. So this is the difference between qualitative and quantitative research. So if you want my suggestion, what kind of research you can do, I would suggest that if you want to learn how to conduct research, then quantitative research is the good starting point, because it will help you learn all those protocols and all those guidelines which are needed to do a valid research. Okay, so it will be a good starting point. But if you want to do something different, you can do qualitative research as well. But remember that qualitative research will have different protocols. Okay, so the statistical test which we will learn in class, these statistical tests will most likely be used in the quantitative research. Like we will be learning some softwares. So those softwares will most likely be used in the quantitative research. For qualitative research, we have different softwares, and I don't think so we will have time, but I will try my best. If we have sufficient time, we will at least have one session for the qualitative research softwares as well. So if this is your first research and if this is the beginning of your research, then I will suggest that in the beginning you can do quantitative research, because quantitative research is usually very structured, and because students, they need a structured approach. Okay, you need some guidelines and some protocols. So it is very, if you put yourself in the process will take you through. Okay, this is something which one of my teacher suggested me, that if you put yourself in the process will take you through. This is quantitative research. You will just put yourself in the process, and that process will help you conduct the research. But in qualitative research, because it is very flexible, you need to have a very good understanding of research if you want to conduct qualitative research. But I believe that some of you might have that understanding. And if you are combining these two methods, if you are combining these two methods, then it is called as mixed method research. So mixed method research and qualitative research, these methods are usually used, if you have already done some kind of preliminary research. If you have not done some kind of preliminary research, then I will suggest that you should go for quantitative research. But if you're going for qualitative research, then I will provide you all the guidance. So but my personal suggestion, because this is your very first attempt of understanding research, I will suggest you to go for quantitative research. Okay, so these are different kinds of research. Okay, any question? Is mixed research a combination of yes, exactly, the mixed research is a
Knowledge is limited.
The mixed research is a combination of qualitative research and quantitative research. Exactly. Yeah, you got it right.
Existing knowledge is limited.
Can you give us some specific examples of these three types? Okay, I will give you some specific examples now. Okay, you have asked about knowledge as well. Now, let me first try to make you understand that knowledge has a different connotation in terms of quantitative research and qualitative research. So first of all, let me give you examples. Okay, quantitative research. So in quantitative research, the main thing is that you are trying to find the relationship between GPA and student admission in top 500 universities. Okay, so you will get GPA information and you will get student admission in top 500 universities. You will put this information in software and you will run regression analysis. And in that regression analysis, you might get R square answer as, let's say, 0.25. This will mean that GPA is contributing 25%. So GPA is 25% reason behind getting admission in top 500 universities. So basically, we give you answer in terms of numbers in quantitative research. So quantitative research is very specific. The data is objective. It is highly objective oriented, and whatever the answer is in the empirical form. The answer is in the numerical form. So we have got the empirical data, and with the help of that empirical data, we can get our answers. Okay, so this is a very simple example of quantitative research. Okay, so this is statistical analysis. We have gathered the data, we have gathered the numbers, and then we have found our answers. In qualitative research, it will be quite different. For example, so qualitative research question could be like this. The qualitative research question could like this: why WKU students are are why some WKU students get admission into top 500 universities and others cannot. Now this is a research question which can only be answered in following ways. Number one, either you will look at the universities which have you will get the interviews from the universities admission committees, or you will interview the students, you will interview the faculty of WKU, and then you will list down the reasons. So you don't need to do anything numerically, you don't need to do anything empirically. So you should be very good. In case of qualitative research, you should be very good in your reasoning. You should be very good in terms of argument building. You should be very good in terms of deduction, or I should say inductive logic. You should be very good in these three particular domains. If you're not good in these three domains, then your qualitative research will not be very good. Okay, so that is why I have suggested you to go for the quantitative research, because it gives you answer in terms of numerical data. It is easier to understand numerical data, but qualitative research gives you answers in terms of text data, and it is very difficult to make sense of textual data unless and until you are very good in terms of reasoning, or you are very good in terms of inductive logic and argument building. Okay, so you got the answer, Mingbai Ma? Mingbai? Okay, so let us go forward. Is the answer clear? Source of information, not really. The source of information is not the point of differentiation between them. It is the way we conduct them. Sometimes even in quantitative research, we can get the information from the human beings. So no, it is not the main difference. It is not the main difference. So the main difference is the way we conduct the research. The main difference are the protocols, the guidelines. Okay. Okay, so what is this question? Number is. What is number is? I did not understand the question by Shang Shang. No, the quantitative research cannot be done through interviews. No, yes. So we cannot do quantitative research through interviews. We should not do, and we should not do quantitative research through interviews. So yes, your question is answered. Yeah, we will not do. Yes, numerical form. So yes, by number, if you mean numerical data, yes. In quantitative research, we get empirical data, but in qualitative research, we don't get empirical data. So yes, this is one of the main difference. Okay, I got your question. Explanatory research needs some guidelines, and our focus in this research course is how to do explanatory research, because whatever the guidelines we will be following, those guidelines will be used for the explanatory research. So let me make you some some connections. You will be doing basic research, you will be doing explanatory research, and you will be doing quantitative research. So when you do these three kinds of researches, their guidelines are more or less very similar. Okay, so if I join these three together, these three research they gel very well with each other. Okay, they go very well with each other. So these three research, if you choose these three research types, then this is a very good combination. Yeah, this is my suggestion, that you should choose these three combination, and this is a very good combination. Uh, in quantitative research, we need numerical data. In qualitative research, we need qualitative data. Qualitative data means textual data, data in the written form. So the numerical data, the empirical data is one of the main difference between the quantitative research and the qualitative research. So yes, if you combine basic research with if you combine pure research with explanatory research with the quantitative research, their guidelines are more or less similar. So we will be focusing on the guidelines for this combination. Okay. So yes, I think this is a very good combination. If you combine pure research with explanatory research with quantitative research, this is a very good combination. Yep. Any other question? Any other question? Not really. You have to choose one type from applications. You have to choose one type from objectives. You have to choose one type from inquiry mode. Okay, so you cannot say that I am only doing basic research. No, you have to choose one type from this section. You have to choose one type from objective section, and you have to choose one type from the inquiry mode. So this combination, which I have just suggested, this is a very good combination. We use numbers or statistics. Yep, you got it right, Bruce. You got it right. Okay. Any other question? Because then we will move to the next slide. Yeah. Any other question? So the exploratory research means looking into some questions which weren't found before. Yes, exploratory research means looking into some questions which weren't found before. And there is one more difference in the exploratory research, which I will tell you in the coming slides, and that is operationalization of the variables. Because you're interested in discussing about this topic, so I will try to explain this. In exploratory research, one very important difference is the uh, operationalization of concepts. Operationalization means that can you measure, can you measure, can you measure a concept? If you can measure a concept, it becomes an explanatory research. If you cannot measure a concept, it becomes an exploratory research. So in exploratory research, operationalization of concepts is usually not possible. Okay, so I will explain this concept in the coming lectures when we will discuss about operationalization. So, okay, so you will understand it there. Any other question? Hmm. Okay, so let me move to the next slide. Okay. So we have discussed all these research types, and there is one more research type which was not in that slide. That was research type by time horizon. So there is one more research type which is not usually discussed, but I would like to discuss research type by time horizon. Okay, so when we make this comparison, we have two main types: longitudinal research and cross-sectional research. In longitudinal research, we study one phenomena in multiple time zones, in multiple time settings, multiple times. We collect data multiple times. Okay, we collect data multiple times. For example, I will give you an example. Uh, Before COVID and after COVID, how your life has changed before COVID and after COVID. So if the data was collected before COVID and again the data is collected after COVID, it would be a longitudinal research. Okay. And if you are doing a research about the performance of Apple stock from 2000 to 2021, this is again a longitudinal research because you want to find out the effect of time. So in longitudinal research, the effect of time is measured. The effect of time is counted. But in cross-sectional research, the data is collected at a single point of time. A single point of time, the data is collected. So we collect data at single point of time. So the effect of time is not taken into consideration in the cross-sectional research. So this is another research type which is usually not discussed, but I would like to emphasize this research type as well. In the research type by time horizon, we have two research types: longitudinal research and cross-sectional research. I will recommend to you cross-sectional research. Why? Because we don't have sufficient time. Our semester is finishing on 18th of December, and I think the deadline for submitting your research report would be like 10 December or 11 December. So you have just 3.5 months. So we don't have a lot of time about conducting longitudinal research. So, but if you're doing finance research, if you're doing research on stock markets, then you can conduct longitudinal research. So if you are a finance student, if you are an accounting student, and if you want to find out the relationship between the return on investment and the dividends, all these kind of concepts, if you want to find out the relationship in last 20 years, then you can conduct longitudinal research. But my recommendation to you is that because we don't have much time, if you're not a finance student, then I think cross-sectional research is a very doable thing in 3.5 months. Okay, so there are some questions. Okay. Yes, so in pure research, we should find the solution of some problems that we often face. Exactly. So longitudinal should collect info spanning years in a period. Yes, so longitudinal research takes into consideration the effect of time. So I just said that, for example, uh, how about your course? I will give you an example of longitudinal research in the area of management. Okay. So your evaluations of WKU in first year, then your evaluations in second year, and then in third year, then in fourth year. Okay, so maybe your evaluations of WKU in a span of 4 years time period, how your evaluations are impacted. Maybe your evaluations could be like this. Your evaluations might be like this. So in first year, you have high better evaluations. In second year, you have low evaluations. In third year, you have low evaluations. In fourth year, you have very low evaluations. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. But some people in the first year, they have average evaluations, second year average, third year average, 4 year average. And for some people, it might be like this. So this is longitudinal research. Okay. So how the student perception of the university has changed over a span of 4 years. So, okay. So longitudinal research can be done, but because we don't have a lot of time. We had just have 3.5 months to complete our research projects, and the application of longitudinal research is very only in certain situations you can apply longitudinal research in such a limited time period. Like you can collect data from stock market, you can collect data from annual reports of the companies for last 20 years. You can do this kind of research. This will be longitudinal research. But if you're doing you're collecting data from students in the form of questionnaires, then it is very difficult for you to conduct longitudinal research. I just gave you an example that this is a 4 year long longitudinal research. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, we have a question here. How? What does how means? Shangshang, what does how mean? I don't understand your question. Define single point. Okay. How to define single point? Okay, let me define single point. It is very easy. Single point means that, for example, you have developed a questionnaire and you have made an online link of that questionnaire and you shared that online link with your class fellows. Okay. And you collected data and you get close to 250 responses. And although those responses are collected in 1 week, but still it will be a single point in time data. Why? Because you did not take into consideration the effect of time in your data. So if you are using questionnaire to collect data, and even if you are able to collect your responses in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it will still be a cross-sectional data. Longitudinal data means that a same respondent is asked the response multiple times. Okay. In longitudinal research, a respondent is basically in longitudinal, you're basically same respondent gives the response multiple times. But in cross-sectional research, respondent gives response only single time. Okay, one time. So this is the main difference between longitudinal research and cross-sectional research. Okay. So yes, yes. Okay, one by one. Should we do research by individual? Yes, you can do research by individual. You can do research on consumers. You can do research on students. You can do research on faculty members. You can do research on faculty members. You can do research on students. So yes, you can do research on individuals. Where can we find the data we want? Is it okay to find them on Chinese website? Well, it depends. If you whether you want to do research on primary data or secondary data. Okay, what is the difference between primary data and secondary data? Primary data is the data which you get from people. Okay, usually in the survey or questionnaire form, you get data from the people. This is called as the primary data. And then you have secondary data. Secondary data is the data which you get from organizations, okay, like stock markets, like Bloomberg. You can get data from Bloomberg. Okay, so if you want to get data about any company, you can get the data from the Bloomberg. So Chinese website, I am not sure what kind of website you are looking for. If there is a website like Bloomberg and they have the data, then you can get data from there. But no, it is not okay to get the data from the website. So I will recommend you to either use these two kind of data. Primary data, you can get data from the people. You can ask them the questions and they will answer you the questions. This is called as primary data. Okay, or either you or use the secondary data, the data from the organizations, and that data is usually found in the stock markets or Bloomberg. You can use the Bloomberg data house. So data can be used only from these two sources. Other sources are should not be used to collect data. Okay, how can we make use of cross sectional since the data is not lasting? Could you give us some more examples on this? So almost all kind of research, it is they are which are using the primary data, and they are using primary data to answer questions in such a way that the data is not collected from the participants more than one time. It is a cross sectional data. Okay, let me give you an example. For instance, we just discussed about the relationship between GPA and admission in top 500 universities. Okay, so what will you do? You will collect data. Now this will be a secondary data. This will not be a primary data. Why? Because the information about GPA can be found from the university. Admission information about the admission, it can also be found from the university. So what you are doing, you're collecting secondary data. Okay, but if you want to see how the GPA and admission in top 500 universities, it has been happening since 2015. So you will collect data for 2015, you will collect data for 2016, for 2017, for 2018, for 19, for 2020, and 2021. So you will collect data for 6 years. This will become longitudinal research. But if you are only focusing on 2021, this will not be longitudinal research. This will be cross-sectional research. Okay, understood? Okay, so I think we have crossed our time limit as well. So let me finish this lecture here. So in our next lecture, we will start our discussion from here. If you have any question, you can ask me that question in the WeChat group. Thank you very much for your time. And we will start our discussion from this juncture. Okay, guys, thank you very much for your time. So bye-bye. I think you have a time for your next class. So bye-bye. See you in the next class.